Our enemy, Satan, never quits. He always is looking for an opportunity to discourage us and tempt us to doubt. Welcome to the Word for 2021. Today we're in Genesis chapter 15. Yesterday we read in chapter 14 that Abraham had an amazing victory over 4 kings. He rescued Lot. He worshiped God before Melchizedek. He resisted criticism from the king of Sodom, and he reaffirmed his trust in God to be his provider. Now here in chapter 15, Abraham is hit with discouragement and with doubt. This is what we read beginning in verse 1. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. But Abraham said, O sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer from Damascus? And Abraham said, You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Then the word of the Lord came to him, This man will not be your heir, but a son coming from your own body will be your heir. Abram was full of doubt. Time had been going by and he wasn't seeing the promise of God coming to fruition. And so he started to wane in his faith. And he voiced it before the Lord. But God then gave him a stern command. You will not have this man as your heir. The heir will come from your own body. Abram did not understand what God was going to do. He didn't see how God can keep that promise. So he rationalized that someone else in his family would be his heir. Rationalization is always the road to disaster. God dealt with that right away. And then Abram was told by God to look up into the sky in verse 5 and count the stars. In fact, if you can count them. And then it says that Abram believed God. In verse 6, Abram believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness. Simply by believing what God said, he was counted as being righteous. After this, as we continue to read in chapter 15, he went into a place where he had a vision from God. He saw the future. He saw where his descendants would be enslaved in Egypt for 400 years, but that they would come out with great possessions. They would come back to this very spot in the 4th generation. Why? Because God said that the sin of the Amorites had not yet come to its full measure. As we read chapter 15, we understand that we mark time by hours. We look at our watch, but God marks time by generations. God sees the future and he prophesies about the future. As we continue here in chapter 15, God made a covenant with Abram, and God is a covenant keeper. Just like the promise that God gave to Noah, it was unconditional. This promise is an eternal promise. The covenant cannot fail because God cannot fail. As we read this chapter, we understand that God knows the past, the present, and the future. God knows my past and present and future. He also knows your past, present, and future. God is trustworthy and true. His character never changes. God keeps his word because he is faithful. Just as Noah trusted God, just as Abram trusted God, God invites you and me to trust him too. Thank you for joining the Word for 2021.